Well, good evening, everyone. I think it's time for us to begin. And I'm delighted to see so many here and so many different new faces. And I've had so many different people talk to me over the course of the past couple of weeks about what we've got going on here and about how needed it is, not just in the world outside, but surprisingly how much we need it in the church and in our families. And so I'm definitely honored that we've been able to have this. And I am so grateful for everyone that's here and for those that are watching online. You know, confronting ourselves. This is the next step in our talk. You weren't born a drug addict or born to be a drug addict. And you weren't born to be an alcoholic. You weren't born to be a liar. In fact, you weren't even born to be a nail biter like we talked about. You know, but there is some point that you made a decision to either try to do those things or you were persuaded by friends or by family or even by the stressors that you endure in life and relationships and marriage and work. I mean, all of these things can weigh down on us sometimes. And you made that choice. And you took that first step. But you haven't lost the ability to make choices. You may have made a bad choice or a choice that has set you on a path, but the first thing that you've got to realize is that that's not the end of it. If there's something in your life that you want to get rid of, if there's something in your life that's holding you back, something that is causing you pain or problems, it's not the end. You have the ability to make choices, to set a path again and begin a new journey. Just as you started with a single choice, you can make the choice to no longer be a slave of that choice. So last week, we kind of dissected what habit is. And after speaking with a few people, I understand, well, A, how nerdy I sound. I get it, okay? And B, I understand how informational that is. And sometimes sitting and listening to information is somewhat difficult. And so just listening sometimes to the facts and the points and, what causes this and what causes that can cause you to get a little bit derailed from what's actually going on. But I really do believe that if we understand the makeup, just like a doctor understands the body, he can get directly to the problem and start work right away. That's why we talked about the cues and the desires and responses to those desires and the reward that makes up this habit loop. In that talk, we talked about how controlling or eliminating any aspect of that habit loop stops the habit in its tracks. But there is a critical starting point that we must talk about. And I'm going to be honest with you when I say this. It may be hard to start new habits. It may be hard to correct bad old habits. But what we're going to talk about tonight is probably one of the hardest things that there is to do when we want to make changes in our life. And that is, remember, if we don't want to change, we won't change. But the hardest thing is confronting yourself about what's going on. If you did your homework last week, where I asked you to write down 3 habits and then write down some things, the way that you felt before those habits enacted, you're already on to the best part of this. You've already started that introspection, that looking inside. You've already started. You may not even know it, but you've already started it. Taking note and evaluating yourself is vitally, vitally important. You know, we look inward. And when we look inward sometimes, we're going to recognize some ugly things about ourselves. We're going to recognize our strengths, which we're often very good at doing. We're very good at saying, well, I'm good at this. And then we ignore kind of the things that are really making us struggle. But when we look inside and we truly ask ourselves tough questions and we start to dissect our actions and we start to take responsibility for the things that we've done or am doing, we begin to see our weaknesses. And when you start to see weaknesses, it hurts. It does. It really hurts. Because we begin to question ourselves. We begin to doubt ourselves. I'm never, ever going to break this addiction because look at me. I'm never, ever going to stop being a liar. I'm never, ever going to stop drinking. I'm never, ever going to... And you can put whatever you want in there. I like the nail biting, analogy. Because so many people have it. So many people do it. And we look at it like, well, I can't stop doing that. But when you really look inward, you begin to see your weaknesses. You begin to see your strengths. And then you begin to see how it connects to emotion and to your conscience. If you can't do this one simple step, I'm going to warn you, you can't go any further in overcoming any addiction or any habit. You will never be able to stop substance abuse of any kind, change any bad habit, or even really create good new habits if you are not able to look inside and confront yourself. Looking at ourselves is hard, but it's absolutely imperative. It doesn't matter what context we're talking about, whether it's talking about work, whether it's talking about your relationship with your spouse or your relationship with your family or others. It doesn't matter the context. If you're not able to stop and look at yourself in those points, in that context, you won't be able to get it. One of the worst parts is that if you don't stop and look at yourself, eventually you become the hypocrite. That is a very, very tough pill to swallow. We're so quick and easy to point out the flaws in others, even to the point where Jesus would make the point, you strain at the gnat in someone else's eye while you have a plank in your own. We need to make sure we are looking at ourselves. It's a humbling experience when we finally realize who we are and how we act. But in order for it to be humbling and life-changing, we have to be honest. How many of us honestly dissect the things that we do? Honestly recount the way that we've spoken to somebody else? Honestly. Being honest with our actions and thoughts takes a lot of work. And it takes a lot of trust in the ability to change. Because if we don't think that we can change or even want to change, then we will never honestly look at the way that we think. When we give up on things we feel we have no control of, but we can control ourselves, and the fact is that no one else can. But instead of realizing our ability to change, we often dismiss it. And we offer excuses for ourselves. In fact, these are excuses that we would never let anyone else get away with. And because of our habits, because they are somewhat on autopilot, we have to actually confront ourselves and our actions. And when we do that, we need to act like the hero who is standing up to the bully that has been tormenting us for far too long. If you want to change any aspect of yourself, it starts with looking inward at your actions and actually confronting yourself about it. We need to recognize our habits. A number of years ago, I found myself waking up tired. I would get up tired. I would go to school. I was in the university at the time, and I would go to school tired. And then I would go and work out tired, and then I would be even more tired after I worked out. And then I'd go home, and I'd be exhausted, and I would wake up and do the same thing over and over and over again. Until one day, I started drinking Monster energy drink. Now, some of y'all may know exactly what I'm talking about. I wasn't the hardcore Monster drinkers. You know, the green can, the Monster Green can, that was for the hardcore Monster drinkers. I drank the blue one. That was for us more sophisticated folk who didn't like all the sugar. But I started drinking them, and instantly I felt myself having better workouts. I would wake up in the morning and I would grab a Monster Energy drink at the gas station on my way to the gym, and I would drink that on the way to the gym, and I'd get in there and I would have the best workout. I would just crush it the way that I felt. And then I would be able to get done with all the things that I needed to get done with for the day, my school work, working after school as well. Yeah, there was a crash that I would experience, and if you've ever drank energy drinks, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But I was able to get things done that I wanted to get done. And so on and on. On and on this went. It seemed fine at first, but then I started getting very severe headaches. And not like a migraine. I'd had migraines before, but this wasn't a migraine. This was a tension headache that just would not ease up. And y'all know those tension headaches where it just feels like someone has put a band around your head and is just tightening it and tightening it. It was around my head and my neck. And I would just feel this pain, and it just hurt like crazy. I backed off of buying the energy drinks every day, and the headache started to slow. But I still had that itch every time I passed that exact same gas station. And so it went for about 15 years. On and off of that energy drink, I'm going to call it a habit, but this was not just a habit. This was I had to have it. In fact, the military even helped to supply us with Rippets. Now, if you ever find a Rippet, I shouldn't say this, not right now. If you ever find a Rippet, drink it and drink it fast, and you will. It is amazing. Anyway, but this habit went on and on for quite a while. And then one day, a few years ago, about 3 years ago, I had sat down in order to analyze our budget. I was never good with money. I guess that kind of goes with the somewhat irresponsible and lackadaisical view I had on my responsibilities. And so I decided that I was going to go through our budget and start planning some things out. And as I was going through the budget, I realized that I was spending so much money on energy drinks, but yet I was putting nothing in savings towards my future. It finally hit me. My desire for instant satisfaction. That's what a habit is. Instant satisfaction was beating down my desire or my need for future protection. Now, hear that again, because that plays a major role in all of the choices that we make one day. My desire for instant satisfaction was beating down my need for future protection. Bad habits do this. See, we trade the benefit of the future for a single, simple hit that makes us feel better now. It's the ultimate in idiocy. It really is. We have so little foresight in our future, or so little care in our future, that we would be willing to trade the future for the right now. I would be willing to spend that dollar now in order to get that packet of sweet and delicious caffeine than I would be to put that money into an account and then watch that money grow and be able to take care of me when I'm older. Now, I get it. That sounds absolutely insane. It sounds insane to think that one single dollar is going to be able to bring you a lot of joy or peace later on in life. But we don't live our habits just one time, do we? Our habits seem to follow us around everywhere, every day, because we come across the same cues. Our body has the same desires. We respond the exact same way because our body is looking for the exact same reward. If we could just have a little bit of foresight, we would be able to think now instead of reacting to the things around us. In order to try and overcome my habit of energy drinks, I decided that every time I would feel the urge to get a drink and I would pass the gas station that I normally get it at, I'd transfer the same dollar amount into my investment account. The first week I had $20. $1 goes a long way when you are drinking those things quite regularly. And you can apply that to anything. $1 goes a long way when you are smoking a packet of cigarettes a day. $1 goes a long way when you are eating out every single meal. $1 goes a long way because it is not a one-time act. It is a habit that we give into. To help offset some of the other desires, because that's why we act on our habits, is the desire. And to offset some of the other desires, when I would pass that gas station, I would transfer the money, but then I also started I also started bringing with me a glass of water, ice water. And every time I would pass the store and I would get the urge, I'd transfer the money and then I'd take a drink of water. And I would basically be telling my body, shut up, I gave you everything you need, right? I gave you future protection and I gave you the relief from the thirst that you had. Find a way to answer the desire in a response that you want, that you know you need. It's difficult to fully understand sometimes, but trial and error does come into play here. You will dig and dig and dig until you finally hit gold when it comes to satisfying your habits. I found that I actually started to feel better when I was doing that. No, I wasn't as energetic as I felt on the drinks, but I was sleeping better. I didn't have the caffeine running through my system, and I felt comfort knowing that I'm now building future wealth and security, albeit small. I started losing some weight. My anxiety started to drop. And Melissa will tell you, I was a slightly less bit grouchy as I normally am. I could actually start to think clearer and control my emotions better. All of this because I realized I had an issue, and rather than excusing it like I had been for 15 years, it took one small inward look to make the needed changes to respond to my cues and desires better. A lot of us realize we have bad habits and addictions, but lack the strength to stand up to them. A lot of times, it's because we have tried in the past and we failed. I like this quote from Winston Churchill. It goes like this: success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It is the courage to continue that counts. If you are trying, you are making progress. Don't stop trying. I shared a meme. I know many of y'all know Matt Wallen, is a good friend of mine. And he had sent me a book to read. And I sent him this meme back, and it's from the Pirates of the Caribbean. And it shows the two pirates sitting on the boat, and the one pirate says, "You can't read." And the other pirate says, "It's the Bible, you get credit for trying." You get credit for trying. Continue, continue, continue. Theodore Roosevelt, in a speech following his presidency in 1910, said it like this. He said, "It's not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbled, or where the doer of deeds could have done better. But credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. But who does actually strive to do the deeds? Who knows the great enthusiasms, the great devotions? Who spends himself in a worthy cause? Who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement? And who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly? So that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither knew victory nor defeat. The fact is that when you are trying to change, you have to get into the arena. You have to fight. You have to put in the work, no matter how hard your life honestly depends on it. We can't let our failures stop our future. Truth is, since my Monster and Red Bull cleansing days, I have bought energy drinks. And every time I do, I tell myself I'm not going to do it again. Folks, that's a lot what it's like being human. Sometimes we dismiss ourselves as thinking that we should be infallible. We're not. That's not to mean that we excuse the things that we do or we make comfort in the bad choices that we are making. But we do need to give ourselves a little bit of grace in order to be able to pick ourselves back up and keep pushing on. So one of the questions that we need to ask ourselves is, who do we want to be? Who do you want to be? Do you want to be someone who is addicted to something? Do you want to be someone who is controlled without even thinking by our habits? Who do you want to be? You know, one of the best ways to do this is to take inventory, looking inward, of yourself and ask yourself this question. Am I who I want to be? I know that sounds very similar, but one of them is me asking you, but now you need to ask you. Am I who I want to be? You know, most of us can easily answer that question. No. No, I'm not as wealthy as I want to be. I'm not as successful, some people might put it. I'm not as happy as I want to be. I'm not as driven as I want to be or content. I'm not as in shape. I'm not the kind of person who takes and puts priority of good things over bad things. Most of us can easily answer that question. Am I who I want to be? But we need to have a model of what we think we want to be. If it's successful, you have to ask yourself a question. What does successful mean? If it's happy, you have to ask yourself the question. What does happy mean? And when you begin to answer these questions, you begin to lay out for yourself a path by which to get there. If you're an addict and you say, I don't want to be an addict, I don't want to be someone who is reliant on a substance, then you need to ask yourself, what does life look like without that substance in it? What does it look like to be someone who is not an addict? And once you're able to identify that, you're able again to lay the groundwork necessary in order to be able to move to that point. Because an addict wouldn't be someone that says, I think it's time for me to go see my drug dealer. Someone that is not an addict wouldn't have that in their life. They wouldn't have that drive. So what drive would they have? That's the drive that you would seek after. You know, the truth of it is that once we figure out where we want to go, we need to figure out first where we're at. When you plug in directions into Google, it asks you two questions. Where do you want to go? And where are you now? You can't get to where you want to go if Google doesn't know where you're currently at. And the same thing goes with us. We can't get to where we want to go if we're not willing to stop and ask ourselves the tough questions in order to find out exactly where I'm at. And I don't care in what field you put that in. Whether it be someone who is trying to change an addiction or someone who wants to have a better walk with Christ. You're not going to get there if you don't ask yourself the questions. Where am I in my walk Where am I in my journey? You know, the funny thing is that whenever you plug a route into Google or plug a destination into Google, it will give you multiple routes. I think that's a neat feature because I hate Atlanta. And I don't like to go through Atlanta. I will avoid Atlanta. I will drive an hour out of the way around Atlanta just so I don't have to go through Atlanta. And so just like Google, when it gives you the address and it gives you the routes, you've got to choose the route that makes the most sense. You've got to take and lay out which direction you want to go or you know you need to go. I know that Atlanta gives me anxiety. I don't need to go through Atlanta. I know Atlanta gives me road rage. Atlantans know that I don't need to go through Atlanta. So we need to make sure that we are choosing the route that will help us to avoid the issues. This has a lot to do with what we were talking about last week when it talked about cues. If we have a certain cue that triggers a desire, that initiates a response, we need to avoid the cue. It's an interesting thing. Last week, I had someone recommend to me to go ahead and read the book, not The Power of Habits, Atomic Habits. And so last week I read it. And I found it absolutely amazing. Do you know that most people who go to a rehab, who return back to the same spot after rehab, be it home or the same city, 80% of them fall back into their addiction? They didn't eliminate the cues. They got the help. All they did was delay the cues. Folks, choose a route that will get you to your destination, that will avoid your cues. If your destination is to be drug-free and clear-minded, choose a route that avoids all of your cues. And that's not the end of it, obviously. But if you can make that one simple step, you're already exponentially more likely to do better. Look ahead and make choices. You know, this can be difficult. Often when we choose our path, sometimes we don't realize that there are obstacles in the way. I have taken shortcuts on the road only to find out that I've landed myself right in the middle of construction. That's infuriating. I get it. But for a lot of us, when we hit those obstacles, what we decide to do, we would never do this in our cars, but what we would decide to do with ourselves is we decide to turn around and go back home. I'm going to make the steps to change my life. Oops, I hit an obstacle. I guess I better just quit. Nobody says that when they're driving in the car. We're heading to Disneyland, kids. Oh, construction on 75. I guess we should just go home. That's not how we act. Not when it's something that we want to do. You will run into bumps and hurdles. You will run into discouragements. But don't turn the car around. Keep heading to your destination. One year, we were driving up to see Ryan, Melissa and I. And he lived in Nashville at the time. And I think we hadn't seen him in years. I think at that time I was still stationed in Wyoming in the military. Anyway, we were driving to go see him in Nashville. And I'm used to snow because it snows for 13 months out of the year in Wyoming. But when we got into Nashville, there was more snow than I've ever seen. The biggest whiteout. And we had come from Bremen and we were heading up 65. And it was to the point where that 8-lane road going into Nashville looked dangerous in a single file line. Snow everywhere. What person in their right mind would decide it's better to just turn around and go home. We were almost to our destination. One of the things that we can do when we are on our journey, on our trip, on our travels to recovery, to forming good or better habits, is to make your trip short. You do have a long road ahead of you, no matter what it is. Nail biting, you have a long road ahead of you. But if you can make your trip digestible in small pieces, it gets a whole lot easier. When we decide to go to Valdosta, which we do every now and then, I break it up into different parts. First, it's from home to I-75, if I can make it to I-75. And then if I can make it from south of Atlanta down to Forsyth. And then if I can make it from Forsyth to Macon. And then if I can go from Macon to Tifton. And then if I can go from Tifton to Adel. And then Adel to exit 22. And then home. See, when you break up your journey, when you break up your trips, it makes it a lot easier. Once I get to Macon, I don't have to worry about the entire 2 hours it took me to get there. Those 2 hours are gone. They're past. All of the troubles that came along with it, all of the Atlanta drivers came along with it, and they're gone. Now all I have to do is focus on getting to Tifton. You know, when we take and we think about this in how we address ourselves in our habit changing, if I can make it one day without biting my fingernails, you know what? Today I didn't smoke. Today I didn't drink. Today I didn't. Today I'm having a good day. And you know what? I'm going to take it one day at a time. And I'm going to make this day, this journey, continue tomorrow. Because if I can do it today, I can do it tomorrow. Yes, there will be different road bumps. There will be different obstacles. But if I can do it today, I can do it tomorrow. So break your trip up. Make it small wins and focus on those wins. Reprogram your brain to accept those wins rather than accepting the inevitable tomorrow. But again, when you think about it this way, you have to have a plan, right? You have to have a plan on where you're going and how you're going to get there, and breaking that plan up into manageable parts and keep pushing forward even if we hit a bump in the road. You know, one of the best descriptions of this inward look that we're talking about tonight comes from James chapter 1. In verses 19 through 25, it says, "Now this, my beloved brothers, let every person be quick to hear and slow to speak and slow to anger. For the anger of man does not produce the righteousness of God. Therefore, put away all filthiness and rampant wickedness and receive with meekness the implanted word which is able to save your souls." But he doesn't end that thought there. He says, "But be doers of the word and not hearers only, deceiving yourselves. For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks intently at his natural face in a mirror. For he looks at himself and goes away and at once forgets what he was like. But the one who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres." You know what persevere means? In simple Southern, it means to keep on keeping on. Persevere. Being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts, he will be blessed in his doing. See, when we look in the mirror, we must take note of the things we don't like. We need to change. And we don't like doing that, though. Well, we don't like admitting it. All of us have stood in front of the mirror and gone, "That's what I look like?" You know, I don't have a whole lot of hair left. In fact, if you've watched some of the videos, if you're watching on YouTube right now, right about here, there's a giant bald glowing spot on your screen. I know it. I've seen it. Right? But when I wake up in the morning and I go and I look in the mirror and my hair is all over the place, I don't think to myself, "Oh well." I see it and I try to fix it. Try being the imperative word. I try to fix it. We need to do that when we look at ourselves, our actions, our motives, our desires, our character. We need to do that when we look at ourselves and say, I don't like this about me. Don't just walk away from that. Don't just leave it there at the mirror. You need to take that with you. You saw something that needs work. Work it. That is the hardest part, is just confronting yourself about it. I need to change the way that I treat others. Change it. I need to think more positively. Then do what you need to do to get there. Don't just walk away from that mirror. Make the changes. We have to be honest to examine ourselves. When we see something that needs to be changed, be honest about the need to fix it. Be honest about it. Sometimes we just want to dismiss our habits or failings because we'll tell ourselves, who cares what other people think? I can change and it wouldn't change their opinion about me anyway. Who cares? You should care. You know who else cares? God cares. 2 Corinthians chapter 13 and verse 5, examine yourselves. Now there's a caveat to that because Paul is speaking specifically about faith. But isn't that interesting? Here Paul is telling us that we need to make sure to look at ourselves, to watch ourselves, to dissect our actions, our thoughts, our behaviors. Examine yourself to see, test yourself rather, to prove yourself, because you need to find out if you are the fit person. You need to find out if you're fit. Find out who you are. When you put your faith in God to be there with you through all of your struggles, when you put your faith in Him, you can confidently rise above. You have nothing to fear because you have God on your side. David put it like this in Psalms chapter 27, verses 1 through 3. He said, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Evildoers assail me to eat up my flesh, my adversaries and foes. It is they who stumble. Though an army encamp against me, my heart shall not fear. Though war arise against me, yet I will be confident." How can we have that kind of power, that kind of resilience in the face of something as difficult as addiction? Our faith. Next week, we're going to be talking about the cure. The cure to all of this. This is all about understanding how to get to that point. The last 3 lessons have been all about how do we get to that cure. I'm giving you a preview. Your faith is going to play a major, major part in it. We have no reason to be afraid of looking at and critiquing ourselves. It's the only way to initiate change. It is vital for our growth. It is imperative for our healing. When you finally get inside yourself, you begin to examine the structure. You need to take the approach of someone looking to buy a house, who is examining every single aspect about it. Where there's damage, what do I need to do to fix it? Where there are leaks, where there are problems, what do I need to do to address those? But more importantly, when you buy a home, what's one of the key things that you need to inspect? The foundation. You can have a nice looking home. The home can be absolutely gorgeous and beautiful. It can be so opulent, made with all of these very nice things, granite everywhere, and all of these other things that all we could ever do is dream of having in a home. It can have all of that. But if it is on a foundation that is not strong, a foundation that is not sure, all of that in some time will eventually come crashing down. In Matthew chapter 7, Jesus says it like this in verse 24. He says, "Everyone then who hears these words of mine and does them will be like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And the rain fell, and the floods came, and the winds blew and beat on that house, but it did not fall, because it had been founded on the rock. And everyone who hears these words of mine and does not do them will be like a foolish man who built his house on the sand." For those of y'all that don't understand construction, don't build your house on sand. This is as clear as it gets right here. Because the rains will fall, and the floods will come, and the winds will blow and beat against the house. And Jesus says it fell, and great was the fall of it. I remember exactly where I was standing when Ryan told me this. I made mention of it last week. We were standing in my parents' bathroom. We were remodeling it for them. And our conversation had been about church and God. And we had been talking about all of these different things. The aspects of life that Ryan was seeing. The struggles that he was having. We were talking about his lessons that he was learning at Celebrate Recovery and the people that he would meet there. And he had a great fondness for the guy that ran the place. And Ryan told me that one day that guy told Ryan when he had made mention to Ryan that Ryan needed to do something, and Ryan said, "Oh, I don't think I need to do that." Ryan said that he looked him in the face and he says, "It was your best thinking that got you to where you're at." We have to stop basing our actions on our thoughts. What you build on has to be something solid. Build your foundation on Jesus. Build your foundation on His truth, on His word. And you will begin to build a better house. It may take time to build that house, but you will begin to build a house that you never have to worry about falling down around you. You will build a house that is built in a way that it is secure and strong, and it is able to stand against the rain and the winds and the floods and all of the other temptations and trials that you are currently struggling so hard with right now. Build your foundation on Jesus. Look inward. It's imperative to find out who you are. That way you can have a point to start. Be honest with ourselves. It helps to identify the needs that we have. Planning our route. It lays the path for us on how we get to our destination. And push through when things get rough on your route to your destination. Knowing the kind of person we want to be helps us to keep focused on that destination. And building who we are on a strong foundation, one of strength and faith and trust, helps to make the destination something that's worth fighting for. We don't want to go to places that we don't want to go to. Make your destination something desirable. May I suggest, make your destination health and heaven. I know that this is a very difficult thing to grasp sometimes. Sometimes it's easier just to be told what to do. One of the problems with being told what to do is that, again, we're able to turn our minds off and just go to work. If you want to change who you are and become a better version of yourself, you have to start confronting your actions. You have to start confronting your character. You have to decide who it is that you are going to be. Are you going to continue to stay where you're at? Or is today the day that you make the change? Today is the day that you can say, I didn't drink today. I didn't smoke today. I desired these things, but I didn't give in today. It was hard. My journey has started. Tomorrow I will continue my journey. Maybe you are the way that you are because your foundation is cracked. I've already made this mention. You will not be able to build a new house on that same foundation. If you need to know more about Jesus, if you need to know more about God, tell me. Tell somebody. Go to your Bible, open it up, and read about how He is able to change your life. Now, I know that this isn't necessarily a church gathering. This is a drug and substance abuse seminar. But I want to make sure that you understand that faith is going to be the only way that you will make it as far as you're going to be able to make it. Knowing that God loves you. Knowing that God sent His Son Jesus to die for you. Because He loves you. And because He wants what's best for you. And believe it or not, no matter how much we struggle on this earth, what's best for you in all ways is to be able to go home to heaven. Whatever you need to ask somebody. Ask me, write me. If you're on the internet right now, find me. And I will help to point you in the direction that you need to go. We'll go to the Bible together and study it together. Maybe you need prayers. You'd be surprised at what happens when someone prays for you, when someone prays with you. We will pray with you. We will pray for you. That's the third night lesson. But before we go, I want to give you another set of homework. I want you to take and look inward this time and write out the type of person that you want to be. Who do you want to be? And when you write out who you want to be, I want you to ask yourself the hard question, am I on the path to being that person? Or am I not? And then when you realize if you're not on the path, I want you to write the route that you're going to take to get there. Writing these things out is a visual representation of what's happening in your brain. And if you can connect it with your eyes to what's actually happening up in here, sometimes you will have that aha moment. I'm not on the right path. Thank y'all so much for being here this evening. And again, if you have any questions or concerns or anything like that, please don't be afraid to ask. Thank y'all very much.